Hi everybody, I'm Sarah Penner, the author of The Lost Apothecary, which comes out March 2nd, 2021 with Park Row Books and imprint of HarperCollins. So my book obviously has the word apothecary in the title, and today when most of us think about an apothecary, we aren't really sure what that means. It has kind of an enchanting sense to it. It evokes images of somebody blending potions and elixirs, maybe in a dark room, but I thought that today I would give a little bit of background into what an apothecary was or is, because it's really it was very relevant when we look backwards in history over the thousands of years prior to modern medicine. Apothecaries were a very valued and important part of the medical world. So one of the things that I really looked at in the 18th century as part of my research was, where do apothecaries fall in the grand scheme of things relative to, say, a doctor? And there were really four different categories. So the very top of the hierarchy was a physician, and these were university-trained men who dealt in internal medicine. Beneath physicians were surgeons, and these were trained via an apprenticeship, and they dealt with external medicine and, of course, invasive procedures and surgeries. The third category is apothecaries. So physician, surgeon, apothecary, that really gives you a feel for how important these individuals were in history, in medical history. So these apothecaries, they were trained via apprenticeships, and they made up prescriptions and compound remedies. So that's really where we get into this this idea of having vials and pots to mix and blend different ingredients together. Interestingly, the fourth class beneath apothecaries were druggists and chemists, which in my opinion, if I compare that to today, that's a pharmacist, which is it requires a lot of schooling, is a very renowned degree and profession. So druggists and chemists in the 18th century had no formal training, and they were widely used in rural areas. So it's interesting for me to think of the evolution of the medical sciences and where apothecaries fell in that. Because today, when we talk about an apothecary, we really are thinking retail shops that sell things like, they might sell a few herbs, but candles, bath and body products, essential oils, or even like traditional toiletries or medicines, Tylenol, that type of thing. So really the science of apothecaries and what they deal in has changed significantly, and their importance in the medical field has changed significantly over the centuries. One of the places or resources, I should say, that I drew quite a bit of information and inspiration from is titled The Mystery and Art of the Apothecary. This was put together in 1929. Obviously, this is a much more recent reprint, but this discusses the role and the art of the apothecary going all the way back thousands of years to the ancient Egyptians. And it's so fascinating to see the different tools and preparations and instruments that they used thousands of years ago, because some of those things are still in place today. So, I mean, there's a lot of flasks and vials and different types of pots and scales and boxes that were used back then. And if we think today, if we picture a lab or a chemistry lab, we see a lot of those same things. There are different weights and measurements that have changed significantly. So there were terms that I was able to incorporate into my historical novel, terms like scruples and drams and grains, that were used from a historical perspective, but maybe you wouldn't see that necessarily today when we're talking more in teaspoons or ounces or grams. So that was the first resource that I absolutely loved. And if you're interested in learning more about the history of the apothecary, I highly recommend this book. The typeset is beautiful. It's, kind of got that 1920s old font that is just really lovely. And like, I just flipped to this open page, and this is talking about in the year AD 525 was the first mention of rhubarb in medicine. So, you know, whether you have interest in oils, foods, herbs, if you like to cook, if you like plants, whatever you are into, an apothecary has probably worked it into his or her remedies at some point. So this was a very fun book to read. The next resource that I wanted to share, the second resource, is Grateful to Providence. And this is the diary and accounts of Matthew Flinders. He was a surgeon, apothecary, and a man midwife. So as some of you know, I'm a huge fan of first-person resources, which are basically diaries and journals told or recorded by individuals who lived at a certain point in time. So these were his journals from 1775 to 1802. And I love so much of what he has in here. He's got everything from the lunar eclipse that he observed one day to the terribly tragic loss of his infant son, to all of his accounting logs and what receipts he had coming in, and who was late on payment to him, and kind of what he was doing, the bailiff that he was working with to get these funds in. So all sorts of really cool stuff. But I was able to pull from this really what like a day in the life of an apothecary might be like, because he would record those days as his journal entry and talk about waking up before the sun came up to kind of start mixing his tinctures and his remedies that he would deliver to a woman in labor later that day. He recounts a lot about the midwifery side of his business and the babies that he delivered, and whether those were happy stories or tragic stories, because obviously childbirth was much different in the 18th century. It was such a moving, raw, real, and authentic account. So I absolutely love this. This is one of 2 volumes. I don't have the second volume. I felt like this really kind of got me what I needed, and that's something a historical novelist has to be very careful about, is we can waste too much time on research, and at a certain point, when you have what you need to step back and write the story and not go down too many more research holes, or you will never write your book. So 2 quotes that I wanted to cover with you, because the second one is actually in my book, sneak peek. But the first one is from the first resource I showed you, The Mystery and the Art of the Apothecary. And the quote says, "The art of the apothecary has always been associated with the mysterious." And I absolutely loved this. My book at its heart is a mystery. And I hope that the reader realizes that the second that they pick up the book, because my character, my present day character, finds a little apothecary vial. It's connected to some unsolved murders in the 18th century. And so it is a mystery. And I think when people think about the word apothecary, they have that evocative sense of, I don't really know what an apothecary did. I just kind of picture them, you know, doing their secret business. And so I love that quote, that apothecary is kind of a synonym for, you know, this mysterious profession. So I loved that. I almost put that in the front of my book. However, that is not the quote in the front of my book. I included an ancient apothecary's oath that I actually found in an old newspaper excerpt, and that is the quote that I put, and I'm going to read it to you now. I absolutely love it. I should say I'm going to read to you parts of it. It's a longer oath, and in my book I just kind of extracted several pieces that I really loved. And it's funny because when I gave this draft to my editor, she asked me if this was something I invented and created, and I was able to send her the link to the newspaper article with this oath in it and say, no, actually this is really an ancient apothecary's oath. So it's very cool. So I'm just going to read to you. This is the quote in the front of my book. So if and when you hold my book in your hands someday, you will see this at the front. The ancient apothecary's oath is, I swear and promise before God, author and creator of all things, never to teach ungrateful persons or fools the secrets and mysteries of the trade, never to divulge the secrets confided in me, never to administer poisons, to disavow and shun as a pestilence the scandalous and pernicious practices of quacks, empirics, and alchemists, and to keep no stale or bad drug in my shop. may God continue to bless me so long as I continue to obey these things. So I think that this is a wonderfully fitting quote for my book, and if you read it, you will understand why. But I will just give you a hint that the apothecary in my book does not honor and obey a lot of what is in that oath. So that is what I want to wrap up with. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen in. If you are interested in my book, it's available for pre-order now at any major book retailer online. It comes out March 2nd, as I said, and it's also on Goodreads. We're going to be doing a giveaway in August for 25 advanced reader hardcover copies from my publisher. So be sure to add it to your to be read list on Goodreads so that you can get a notification when the giveaway is live. So thanks, guys. Have a good one.